In this episode, we talk about deadly killings in Jharkhand by an elephant that have once again brought the conflict between humans and wildlife into sharp focus. We also talk about the protests going on in Iran and how the situation escalated. But we begin today by talking about the ongoing trade negotiations between India and the United States. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Over the past few months, despite multiple rounds of negotiations, India and the United States have been unable to finalize their long-awaited trade agreement. In fact, recent statements from both President Trump and the US Commerce Secretary even suggested that talks have reached a dead end. However, the appointment of Sergio Gor as the new United States ambassador has revived hopes that the relationship and the deal may finally move forward. Now, to talk about these recent developments, here's my colleague Shashank Bhargava in conversation with the Indian Express's diplomatic affairs editor Shubhajit Roy.
Shubhajit, we've now seen a lot of ups and downs during these ongoing negotiations. And, one layer of friction, one hiccup that we came to know about recently was when US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that Prime Minister Modi did not call President Trump after the deal was set up in May, July last summer, suggesting that that was the reason the deal was stalled. Talk about in what context was Lutnick saying this?
Well, the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is one of the closest confidants of US President Donald Trump. And he came out in a podcast recently where he said that, it was India which sort of vacillated or dragged its feet in concluding the deal. And the deal was ready at some point, and only Prime Minister Modi had to call, and he didn't call President Trump, and therefore the deal could not be concluded.
It's all set up. You have to have Modi call the president. And they were uncomfortable doing it. So Modi didn't call.
Wow.
So that Friday
That is his version of events. What we have seen, if we go by the timeline that he has put out, the timeline that he's indicating is just when the Operation Sindoor, the India-Pakistan's military confrontation, was underway. And after that, when President Trump started claiming credit for brokering the ceasefire, India fact-checked Trump several times. And at that point of time, it was sort of almost going to be a very difficult for an Indian Prime Minister to pick up the phone and talk to the American president and not contradict him over the phone call. So if his sequence of events are correct, if the timeline is correct, then we have to see the circumstances that unfolded at the backdrop of those phone calls. Obviously, the Indian government has said that the characterization of this statement or of the events is inaccurate. And that's been the MEA spokesperson's comment on what Howard Lutnick he said.
India and the United States were committed to negotiating a bilateral trade agreement with the US as far back as 13th of February last year, that is. Since then, two sides have held multiple rounds of negotiations to arrive at a balanced and mutually beneficial trade agreement. On several occasions, we have been close to a deal. The characterization of these discussions in the reported remarks is not accurate. We remain interested in a mutually beneficial trade deal between two complementary economies and look forward to concluding it. Incidentally,
but as you said earlier, the deals sort of negotiations started in end of February, if I remember correctly, last year, after Prime Minister Modi visited the White House and met Donald Trump. Within about a month of his assuming office, they agreed to start the bilateral negotiations for the trade deal. And since then, there have been a lot of ups and downs. It is said that the deal has been, now text was negotiated, but then there were newer demands, newer asks by the US administration, to which India has not yielded as much as the Americans would have wanted to. But we don't know the exact details of these negotiations. And it's been almost, about 10 months or more than 10 months since the negotiations started. But we are yet to see a finality of the deal. And this particular comment gave an impression that probably the deal is as good as dead.
Yeah, in fact, Lucknow said that New Delhi had missed the train.
Yes. So the impression, the perception, what that is emerged after this interview by Lucknow gives that impression that India has missed the train or the deal is nowhere in sight. But as we know now that the deal is still alive, the negotiations are still open, and the new US ambassador designate, Sergio Gor, who is in India, he has said that the two sides will talk again, and that has been the major sort of the new development that has happened, which essentially indicates that all is not lost. There are give and take that is still happening behind closed doors, and so we'll have to see how that trade deal negotiations, how they go ahead and proceed.
And apart from this statement from Lucknow, the other remark we heard was President Trump saying that Prime Minister Modi came to see him, and he quoted Modi saying, "Sir, may I see you, please?"
India ordered 68 Apaches, and Prime Minister Modi came to see me. "Sir, may I see you, please?" Yes, I have a very good relationship with him. He's not that happy with me because, they're paying a lot of tariffs now because they're not doing the oil, but they are. They've now reduced it very substantially, as you know, from Russia. We have the best weapons in the world.
This is very unusual coming from a president, though, of course, this is not very uncommon for Mr. Trump. But how does New Delhi view such statements?
Well, the two things. First is the optics part and second is the substance part. So let's tackle the optics part. So optics wise, it looks that he makes it seem like Prime Minister Modi was groveling in front of the American president. The MEA spokesperson said that, the two leaders have a friendly relationship and they address each other with mutual respect as per the diplomatic norms and protocols. We do know that the two leaders have met several times before, in the first term as well as in the second term. And at last count that the government has said that the two leaders have spoken 8 times in a year in 2025, which tells you the intensity or frequency of conversations that have taken place. So it may happen in a manner of speaking that the Prime Minister may have said that in a much more polite tone. Whether to make that an issue that the Prime Minister was not just polite but more than that, that is a question. I was not in the room, you were not in the room, we don't know how it was spoken, what was spoken. So we cannot really assess that, but this is the background of it. The other thing, the substance of it, why did the Prime Minister request for whatever, was because the Apache helicopters that were due for delivery, they were not delivered on time during the Biden administration. And that was a pain point for India. And the Prime Minister did raise this issue during the conversations in February when he visited the White House. And he raised the issue of delivery. And in fact, all the Apache helicopters have been delivered by December 2025. So as of last month, all of them. So obviously, then President Trump sort of nudged his administration system and they kind of expedited the deliveries, which were going slow. So it was possibly a polite request on the part of the Indian Prime Minister that India needs those helicopters, Apache helicopters, which were meant for the Indian Army. And because India had bought 22 of them for the Indian Air Force and 6 of them it was buying another tranche for the Indian Army. So it could have been the substance-wise, it makes sense that you be polite to request the American president to expedite the delivery of those Apache helicopters.
And you mentioned that now with the newly appointed US Ambassador Sergio Gor, we have seen a much more reconciliatory tone, right? And Gor has even invited India to the Pax Silica initiative. Could you talk about this initiative a bit?
So the new US Ambassador designate to India, Sergio Gor, he arrived on Monday, and he made a statement while taking charge to his staff, and media was also called, where he essentially invited India to Pax Silica. Pax Silica is a US-led strategic initiative on critical minerals and supply chains and semiconductors. So India was kept out of it, whereas some other countries were part of the grouping. And India felt sort of being excluded at that point in time. It had raised those concerns with the counterparts in the US administration. And it seems that after the way Howard Lutnick's statements were seen here as sort of very abrasive, very brazen, very hostile or arrogance, the new US ambassador designate, is trying to heal the wounds and trying to reach out to the Indian government, Indian public, Indian popular opinion by including India into that fold. So it's a sort of a gesture, a step, an incremental gesture towards damage control or repairing the ties, which might lead to a reset of ties as well in some future if things follow through.
And next, we turn to a series of deadly killings in Jharkhand that have once again brought the conflict between humans and wildlife into sharp focus. Over the past month, the West Singhbhum district has been gripped by fear after 20 people were allegedly killed by a single bull elephant. The attacks have triggered panic, forcing hundreds of residents to abandon their homes and flee to safer areas. What's also noteworthy is that the local authorities have described these killings as completely out of the blue and unlike anything seen in the recent past. To understand the situation on the ground and the steps being taken to address it, we are joined by Shubham Tigga from the Indian Express. Shubham, tell us what exactly is unfolding in the West Singhbhum district and why has this region suddenly grabbed national attention?
So, for the first week of January this year, West Singhbhum district went through really disturbing phase. A lone male elephant, a single tusk elephant, went on a rampage across multiple villages in 4 different blocks of West Singhbhum district. And in just about 9 days, or we can say officially 8 days, 20 people were killed. So what's worrying is that officials and wildlife experts are saying a couple of things could be behind this behavior. One possibility is that the elephant might be in the must period. Must is a phase in male elephants when their testosterone levels spikes sharply and they become extremely aggressive and unpredictable. Thus, they can attack almost anything that comes in their way. And the second possibility officials mentioned is that this elephant may have been separated from its herd, especially it is said that the female elephants might have separated the male elephant, and that isolation can also make this elephant disoriented and violent and frustrated. But what really shocked people on the ground is that this is just one elephant doing all this. Normally, elephants avoid humans and animals. They might damage crops, houses, and everything. And even there are incidents in Jharkhand where the killings of people, but they are very rare cases, especially when we talk about West Singhbhum district. Elephants sighting is usual. They come to village, they eat whatever they want, but they go silently. But in this case, elephant killed dogs, goats, and I think cow also. So basically anything that come in front of it, it will kill. So it's also extremely active and strategic in a way. I mean, it comes out of the forest, attacks a village, then disappears back into the forest, and then reappears somewhere else again. So the officials are saying that the speed and aggressiveness is something in this elephant is very unusual. And most of these attacks happened at night when people were sleeping outside their homes or on paddy straw platforms. It's a structure made by the Ho Adivasis, which is called Guyu, to avoid winter after the harvest season.
And reports say that roughly 20 people have lost their lives to this elephant. Can you tell us about some of the victims and what their deaths mean for the community?
Yes, so one case that really stayed with me was of an 8-year-old girl, Sushila. The village name was Babadia, and the elephant attacked the whole family, while they were sleeping outside on the same Guyu, that paddy straw platform. They were sleeping in the winter inside that. And also, I heard that the rice beer also kept inside that Guyu, and the elephant actually got attracted by that, which we call Hadiya. So almost the entire family was attacked by the elephant and killed. Only Sushila and her brother survived. And Sushila herself was badly injured. Her leg was damaged. And in the dark, she was literally crawling downhill, screaming for help, hoping someone would see her. So neighbors did came out, but then they were also terrified that initially people hesitated to even touch her because they feared the elephant might come back if it smelled blood. So that kind of panic was everywhere that night. Her brother survived because he managed to run when the chaos started. And there was also a neighbor's son who had been sleeping on the same platform with the family. He didn't run downhill. I don't know what was that, but it's like pure instinct. He just came out from the back of that structure and climbed straight up to that tall tree with almost no branches. So he stayed there silently watching the entire family getting killed. Then there was a young man named Mangal. I think he was 10 to 15 kilometer away from this village, Babadia village, Padapasaya. So he just got married. I think it's been a year or something, and his wife was pregnant. He stepped out at night to relieve himself and was directly attacked by the elephant. So his family told me that because the elephant stayed focused on him, the others inside the shelter managed to escape. And I mean, these are not just numbers, these are families wiped out and children traumatized and pregnant wives suddenly widowed. It's really heavy on the ground.
And Shubham, how are the families of the victims coping with these losses?
Honestly, in this situation, I think coping is a very big word here. I mean, most families are still in shock mode. Many people have abandoned their homes, especially houses on higher slopes, and moved towards downhill or closer towards their relatives for safety. So, in one village, in this Sushila's home only, funeral rituals were rushed because everyone was scared that elephant might return. Instead of digging graves by hand, which they traditionally and usually do, they used a JCB because nobody wanted to stay out too long. So at the same time, there is also a lot of community support happening. Sushila's uncle and relatives have started preparing a kind of temporary shelter, opening up spaces on their land so neighbors and the families who were staying near Sushila's house can come and stay together for safety. So you see this collective effort, people helping each other for surviving. But despite this support, people still feel abandoned by the, you can say, forest department or the system. There is no sense of protection they have now. So the trauma is very visible, especially among these children. When I went, so one of these kids who survived, since that night, he hasn't spoken a single word. He just stays silent. So psychologically also, people are carrying deep trauma. Not, I think it's not just about physical loss. So yes, there is community strength, but the emotional damage is massive.
And you mentioned that people of the region are disappointed with the forest department. But what are the steps that it has taken so far?
So, according to forest officials, they have mounted a full scale operation and everything they have said. But when I spoke to them last time, I think, and I saw them, the forest team was there. 40 to 50 members were stationed in a temporary camp near the Benisagar village. The last incident happened on January 9 in the Benisagar where we went, and 40 to 50 forest staff was there. And I think currently they have moved their camp from that place to Khark Post, that is also in the near Majgaon block, inside that same block, I think. So they are using thermal drones at night because visibility in dense forest is very poor. So they have kept tranquilizing equipment ready, and special elephant driving teams from West Bengal were brought in. But after that killing of that forester, so wildlife SOS teams and Odisha forest teams are on standby with Jharkhand forest team. And even Vantara team also from Reliance Foundation visited and assessed the situation, but no update from the Jharkhand Forest Department about them. They have also activated a local information network through the villagers, the village heads like Manki and Munda in Ho community. They are the community leaders. So they are also supposed to alert officials the elephant is spotted. And the problem is after the last incident, there have been no confirmed sightings, no trackings and everything, and the officials are actually clueless. So they say that the elephant suddenly disappeared into forest stretches, and they also say that the elephant's behavior was unusually aggressive. Instead of avoiding humans, it was moving directly towards settlements. So on paper, a lot of measures are there, but on the ground, villagers still feel vulnerable and unconvinced.
Right. And Shubham, since people are dissatisfied by the forest department, are they taking any measures in order to keep themselves safe?
Yes, yes, yes. So people have completely changed their daily routine. If you'll see the village, then the women, children, and elderly all are avoiding going out in the early morning or the evening after dark. So many families are no longer sleeping separately. They are coming together in what they feel are safer spaces. In some villages, I've seen that 100 to 150 people are gathered in one place to stay together, leaving their homes behind. And you will see that villages are very, I mean, you can see the silence in the villages. If you'll go to one in the village where the incident had happened, you will see that the villages are very silent and peaceful now. I mean, not peaceful, but in the fear. And all of them are the Adivasi regions. So they are saying that if the forest team give them free hand, they can handle it very nicely. Unfortunately, if they kill the elephant, the forest department will put various charges on them and jail them. So they are saying that it's okay if the forest department kill them, but they are not letting us to kill the elephant. And it's okay if the elephant is killing the Adivasi. So they are saying that. And then I also saw some really self-made safety measures. So this man where I was staying, he actually arranged wires near his roof and walls so that if the elephant tried to break into his house, he could switch on the current to give it a shock. Then there was another village I visited which was extremely isolated. In that village, people have built makeshift platforms on trees almost 30 to 35 feet high, which in whole language they call macha, and in Hindi we call it machan. So entire families sleep up there at night.
And we understand that a lot of informal tracking is also happening in the villages via WhatsApp so that they can keep a check on the whereabouts of the elephant. But Shubham, has the state government responded to this rampage?
So the administration has announced the compensation, and compensation provisions are like around, I think, 4 lakh rupees per deceased family plus, and they have also provided 20,000. So when I went, they already provided 20,000 for the last rides. It's whatever they get initially, but apart from that, no family has got, I think, the entire compensation. We are talking about 4 lakh one. And family also told me that they are still waiting for the full amount, and especially the early victims. And officials are saying that the people have to submit 7 documents, which the villagers are saying that we hardly, I mean, there are villages who are isolated, they don't have document and also don't know about that. What would the department and the government do after that? There are a lot of document they are asking. So beyond compensation, people feel there hasn't been a strong visible reassurance or a long-term planning is not communicated with them.
And Shubham, you also write that the human animal conflict is not new to Jharkhand. So, have we seen such incidents in the past as well?
Yes. So, I mean, the data say that the elephant man conflict is very common in Jharkhand. And this is actually a long term structural problem, like in the forest areas, even in the districts like Odisha and Chhattisgarh, we have seen the thing very common. So, Jharkhand is very dense forest area with mining expansions and broken elephant corridors. So, these all increases the human and also, I mean, human elephant conflicts, and human settlements have also increased by time. So the elephant movement have also increased because of the less space they are getting in the forest. And if we go with the official data, then in the last 18 years, over 1,070 people have died in elephant related incidents in the state, and around 150 elephant have also killed. So conflict goes both ways, and West Singhbhum itself is a heavily mining affected, iron mining and everything. There is then Tata, then there is Vedanta, then there is Rungta, and West Singhbhum district gets huge amount of DMFT fund across Jharkhand. I think West Singhbhum is the second top district which gets the highest DMFT fund after Dhanbad. So yet forest fragmentation keeps increasing, and when we know that when corridors shrink or the everything these happen, the mining and everything, elephants are forced into villages for food and movement. Earlier too, we have seen deaths in districts like Chhatra, Ramgarh, and Hazaribagh, and the whole Saranda belt in West Singhbhum and different districts. But what's different this time is the intensity and speed, and this is the speed of just one elephant. So 20 deaths in such a short span is extremely alarming. So this incident is in isolated. It's a, I think, warning sign of a much deeper ecological and administration governance crisis.
And finally, we turn to the ongoing tension in Iran. With US President Donald Trump saying that help is on its way, tensions in Iran have sharply escalated, even as protests continue to spread across the country. According to a human rights activist group, more than 2,500 people have been killed since the current wave of protests began on 28th of December. The unrest, which has now reached at least 22 of Iran's 31 districts, began with demonstrations by merchants at Tehran's Grand Bazaar and was driven largely by economic distress. Inflation across 2025 rose by at least 30% to over 52%. And the Iranian rial lost more than half of its value over the past year, falling last week to a record low of 1.46 million to the US dollar. Since last Thursday, the protests have intensified, with more people on streets and harsh crackdown by authorities, along with a communication blackout. Now, with growing uncertainty over possible US action, Iran briefly closed its airspace to commercial flights yesterday. This prompted India to begin preparations to evacuate its nationals. Around 10,000 Indians are currently in Iran, including pilgrims and medical students. Sources in the Ministry of External Affairs said arrangements are being made for those who wish to return. This followed an advisory from the Indian Embassy urging citizens to leave Iran and avoid protest areas. According to the Indian Express's Diplomatic Affairs editor Shubhajit, the embassy has been coordinating with universities and students, many of whom are already registered with passport details. The first batch of students has been asked to remain ready for evacuation starting today, with more flights expected in the coming days. Iran's airspace closure lasted over 4 hours, affecting a key east-west aviation corridor. Although flights later resumed, Air India and Indigo continue to avoid Iranian airspace for now. This has added to operational challenges already caused by Pakistan's long-standing ban on Indian aircraft. Avoiding Iran adds about an hour to Air India's westward routes to North America, requiring passenger capacity adjustments. Air India is now routing flights through Iraqi airspace. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.